We are joined now by criminal lawyer Nick Freeman. It always astounds me, Nick, I don't know about you, how Denise Fergus is able to just simply keep going with what happened to her son.
Yeah, remarkable woman with massive courage and determination. And, you know, she says she's two women, and this is one aspect of her life that she will never give up on.
Absolutely. And is she right that these laws, when it comes to parole, need completely overhauling?
Yes, they do. In Venables' case, you know, he was released in 2001. He was rearrested because he committed further similar associated cases of paedophilia, fascination with sex and children. He was locked up again. He then was granted parole again. And he abused the system again. So he's been given chance after chance, and there's been a huge amount of time and expense concentrated on him to try and help him with his problem. And at this last hearing, it's been concluded that, number one, he still poses a huge threat to the public, and that threat is not manageable. And quite pertinently, they say that, you know, he would take drugs secretly if he could, and watch inappropriate material. So he's not sorted the problem out. He's not being honest with his probation officer. He's trying to pull the wool over everyone's eyes. He chose, for example, that the hearing was conducted in private, as it often is, but he chose not to attend. And the reason he did that was so that he couldn't be cross-examined. He couldn't be asked questions about how he is, where he is. And if he really said that I'm a reformed character, he should be able to put himself in a position where he stands up to scrutiny and explains what he's done, where he is now, and how he feels he's safe. It's all very well saying, when you're not tested, I feel that I'm safe to be released on the streets. But that needs to be probed and questioned, and he's deprived this parole board of that. And of course, there are very skilled people on the parole board, psychologists. Of course, Denise Ferguson wasn't there, but her lawyer was there. But of course, no one's been able to ask him questions because he didn't appear. So the legislation, you know, he's going to have another review probably in 2 years' time. And one of my concerns is, you know, how many times do you give someone another chance? You know, because the family have to keep reliving the situation, or his family, his parents, James Bulger's parents. Every 2 years, it's life that they can't really move on with their life. And you think, yes, punishment's meant to be punitive and remedial. He's had his chance. And I think there needs to be a limit. But I'm not completely in favour of the Lord Chancellor, the Secretary of Justice, being able to block it, because I think we then have too much interference from the government. I think ultimately the decision has to be the Parole Board, and I think it's right they make representations, but I do think we need to limit the amount of reviews that somebody can have. He's had two opportunities, and he's completely ignored those. He's not in any better place now than he was then, and he's not cooperating, and he's not being honest with himself.
What do you think the limit should be then, Nick? Because, you know, you talk about the huge amounts of money that has been spent on Venables. Just hearing from Denise there, she thinks that the system has been preferential to him, really, protected his identity when he has been released, and the money spent on him as well. And as you say, he's already been given two chances. He's already been released twice and recalled back to prison. And as you said, the 2 years, it's so cruel for the family and Denise, every 2 years, feeling as though he could be released. I believe many people out there want to believe in rehabilitation, would like to believe that people can change. But does it come to a point with someone like Venables where they can't change? They are just intrinsically evil, and perhaps it should be something like 10, 15 years before the next parole?
Well, I think you're absolutely spot on. As you were asking me the question, in my mind, I was thinking of 10 years. There shouldn't be an application less than 10 years. You know, it's important to bear in mind, you know, he was 10 years old when he committed this heinous crime. So he was a child himself. And it's also important to bear in mind, I think we're 30 years on now, and that they've concluded that he still poses a significant threat to children, which is unmanageable. So if it hasn't worked after 30 years, with the huge investment and expense and, you know, the professionalism that's gone into trying to help him in a very preferential way, one has to ask the question, is it ever really seriously going to happen? Is he ever going to be in a situation where he no longer poses a threat? I'm not qualified to say that, but after 30 years, you have to conclude it's probably unlikely, isn't it? Because he's had more than ample opportunity, and he's not going to succeed in pulling the wool over people's eyes. So to answer your question, I would say a minimum of 10 years. He didn't get a whole life sentence, but it is possible that he will spend the rest of his life behind bars.
And Nick, both Jon Venables and Robert Thompson were sentenced to indefinite detention at the time when, yes, they were still children, but many would argue they were 10 years old. They knew exactly that what they were doing was abhorrent. They are child killers. Should they have had, even at that age, a whole life tariff?
No, definitely not. At the age of 10, they were just at the age of criminal liability. It was 10 in 1993. And so, without question, the punishment that was imposed was the right punishment because they were children. They were just within that age where they could be criminally liable. The court was quite satisfied. They knew the distinction between right and wrong. Therefore, they proceeded to trial and they were both convicted. But I think it would have been wholly wrong and inappropriate. And I'm not in any way diminishing the horrendous crime that they committed. But you do have to remember, number one, their age and the purpose of sentencing. And it's not just to punish. There is also this remedial aspect, which has to be right in a human society, more so when you're dealing with somebody who was just at the age of criminal culpability. Without question, the right procedures have been adopted. Thompson has taken advantage of it. As far as we're aware, he's not troubled the courts at all since his release in 2001. Venables is a very different story.
OK, Nick Freeman, criminal lawyer, very good to speak to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.